Well, I'm very excited to be joined by Gren Thomas today. He's one of the more experienced and more successful mining executives that Canada has, and I've wanted to sit down with him for a long time, and the stars have aligned. So, Gren, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
If I can, I want to know a little bit about your early life and what it was like for you as a kid.
You know, before I begin, I'd like to say I don't really describe myself as a mining executive. I sort of describe myself as a prospect. I got lucky. I was forced into the executive role, but I'm not particularly good at it. But I'm basically just like exploration. But anyway, but I've been in the mining business for a long time. I started when I was 16 in a coal mine in Wales in 1957.
Are you Welsh?
Yeah. And before that, I'd been in school till I was 16. And then I went to work in a coal mine. And then I went to, day school and night school and this sort of stuff for a period of a year or two. And then I eventually went to university when I was 19, 20. And I did mining engineering. When I graduated, I then came to Canada to get, different kind of experience in metal mines and what have you. And I moved to Sudbury. And from Sudbury, I moved to Yellowknife in 1964 when, just a year or so after graduating. But I was brought up in a mining and a steel sort of community in the Swansea Valley. It was not an easy life, but it was a good childhood. I had a great childhood. And despite the fact we weren't particularly endowed with riches, but it was a rich life, because I was surrounded by, singing and sort of rugby and that sort of stuff, and a lot of cultural stuff that distinguished that area, from other parts of the world. And it was something I think that stood me in good stead, really, at the end of the day.
So what was the thinking in moving to Canada?
Well, my idea was I'd worked in a coal mine since I was 16, 17. And I thought, well, I've got this degree in mining engineering, now I should go and learn something about other mines, So I moved to Sudbury for the summer. I worked in nickel mines. And then I liked it enough, I thought, well, I'm going to stay. And I moved up to Yellowknife and spent another year up there.
So is it your first experience in the bush in the north, in the Arctic?
Yeah. Well, what happened then was I was working in this gold mine. I have a lot of interesting stories about that too. And I worked there for about a year. And they were short of a geologist on an exploration crew, out in the tundra.
Yeah.
And I was asked by the exploration manager would I be interested in going out there to fill this guy's role. And I said, well, I don't really know a hell lot about geology. I mean, I did first year geology in university, and that's about it. Oh, he said, you'll work it out, just typical Canadian fashion, very practical. No, you'll figure it out. So off I went. And I thought, well, this is a pretty good life. I'm canoeing around the place, and there's caribou and wolves, and sort of I'm prospecting, and it's weather's beautiful, and I'm getting paid for it. I think I'm just like being on holidays. So after that, I got the bug, and I sort of could never settle back into mining after that. It was, I got the bug in the summer of '65. And ever since then, of course, I spent a lot of time out in the bush, particularly in the north, but also in Greenland and Yukon and parts of South America, Australia. In those days, exploration companies would have numerous prospects, that they'd be working on at the same time. And the idea was that one of these would pop out of the group, and you'd say, well, okay, now we're going to focus on this, and we'd put that in a separate company, or we'd get rid of the other properties, and that this was common in those days. Nowadays, people are like one-trick ponies, right? They'll go out, they'll find a project, they'll form a company on it, and then everything will go into that project. And normally these are previous discoveries that someone else has made that contains, say, 500,000 ounces of gold or something, and the person that finds this out decides, well, I can raise money and I can find 2 million ounces here. And this is commonly what's been happening in the last 20 or 30 years, right? There's nothing like the amount of grassroots exploration that used to go on when I was first started. And that's what I do, actually. I'm a grassroots guy, right? Most of the things I've been involved with I've found right from the beginning. You know, we've found it and we've sort of explored it, you know. I don't tend to go out there and find things that have been worked on much before. I tend to do grassroots, that is going out in the field doing the prospecting and the stream geochem, regional geophysics or whatever, and then making something new, right, which is what Diavik was. In the fall of '91, the announcement was made that they had found diamond pipes in Lac de Gras, you know, by Chuck Phippie and Diamond. This was in, I think, September or October or something, October, November.
And were you familiar with the area?
Well, this is the first year I'd gone to work in the bush when I had been sent up there in '65, but not far from there. So I was sort of familiar with it, but I didn't know that much about geology in those days. And of course, this diamond issue, no one knew anything about diamonds, right? And we were all scratching around, wondering what the significance of these results were. I mean, they said, well, we've got, you know, so many micro diamonds in this sample, and of course, all the diamond people say, well, this is important. The rest of us were scratching our heads, wondering, well, what does it mean? So I was going down to Toronto a day or so after this announcement to discuss what we were going to do with Aber and particularly with West Viking. So I get down there and I said, to the chaps there, I said, look, you know, have you read about this discovery in Northwest Territories? And they said, well, we read something about it. What does it mean? So there was a discussion ensued, and someone said, why don't we get Chris Jennings in here and get him to explain to us what the significance of this discovery is? And Chris had been involved with us in Greenland on the behalf of one of the Dundee companies, you know, the Goodman companies. Mm-hmm. And I'd got to know him, and Lee Barker particularly knew him, and he said, I'll give him a call. So we gave him a call, and he came, and Ned has told us the story. But if you heard Chris tell a story, you know, Chris is so enthusiastic. And of course, he's been trying to encourage people to go up into that area because he knows something's been found up there, right? But no one would listen to him. And BHP and Diamond are keeping it very secret. So it's not common knowledge. And Chris is insisting these guys have found something up there. But he couldn't get anyone to back him. So anyway, after he finished with us in this meeting, we were all determined now we were going up to stake claims immediately around the Diamond discovery. And which is what Chris and I endeavored to do then. I made the phone calls to Yale, and I've got all the staking crews lined up. And Chris and I were up there within 3 or 4 days. And we stayed in separate places so no one would see us together and put 2 and 2 together. Chris went in with the crew, and then we staked eventually what amounted to about 600,000 or 700,000 acres, like immediately adjoining the BHP ground. And this of course is in November, and so the daylight was fairly limited, and of course it was very cold. It was probably 30, 40 below and dark. We then started to plan what we were going to do the following spring. The staking rush is still like what they describe as the phony war. You know, when the war broke out in Europe, nothing happened. So even in there, we staked all this ground thinking, well, the world will flock to our door now because we've got all this land. And no one else seemed to realize what was going on except us. So, mm-hmm. So it was a period in there where it was quite quiet, you know. And so anyway, spring comes around, and by this time a lot more people are aware of what's going on now. People have learned something about diamonds. A lot of diamond people have looked at the results and said, well, look, this is quite significant. And these pipes, they don't really occur in isolation. They're usually in clusters of hundreds. So this excited the world, of course, because any ground is prospective. So in other words, although they're sitting here, that area of the geological area of the world is very prospective for diamonds, it turns out, which of course turned out to be true, right? Because these very rich mines were found there. But the geos that knew diamonds said, you know, this is, where should we stake? Stake anywhere. So the next thing you know, there's 50 million acres staked. This was the biggest stake rush in the world. So you can only do it up there, right? Because you've got no lines to cut. It's in the barren lands using helicopters. There's you can stake practically unlimited amounts of claims, and you had lots of good geology. So you end up with this massive staking rush, which is I don't think in doubt is the largest in the world, right?
So was your stock price just running on the?
The stock then went from about 30 or 40 cents, where it been up to maybe $1, and I think we did our first financing at about $1 after we acquired the ground, and thereafter then a lot more interest came into it, and the brokers then started to realize that these diamond stocks could be the hot item, and of course you had dozens and dozens of companies then going up and acquiring ground, and a lot of exploration took place the following 2 years, a lot of exploration, with billions spent in that. And it was extremely exciting. And of course, in the middle of all this exploration going on by the peripheral companies, BHP and Diamond eventually announced they've found more important pipes than the one that they reported in 91. In other words, now they were starting to see commercial grades and values in there, which just cranked the market up more, right? Mm-hmm. And so everything that people had thought was turning out to be correct, that this was a diamond field. So they found like 3 or 4 pipes. And we were actually starting exploration there in 92, actually found pipes as well, but they didn't contain a lot of diamonds. See, we didn't find our diamonds until 94. I mean, the important ones, like 154. And so we started exploring 92, 93, and it was 94 we made these discoveries. But other people had found pipes as well in the meantime, and but none of them were as good as the ones that we discovered in 94. But anyway, the day that the discovery was made was very interesting because we found an indicator train coming out of Lac de Gras, and it was coming from a pipe called A21. So we looked at this data. We got this data in early 94, and we thought, well, it must be something in the lake here. So we took a close look at the lake, and we see these magnetic signatures in the lake, but not particularly strong. They haven't been like the ones we've been drilling so far, which were pretty obvious. These things are more subtle. So we decided to drill this A21, and so we put a drill on and drilled it, and sure enough, it was a kimberlite, a diamondiferous kimberlite, which was really the first discovery, right? But then we looked around the lake, and we thought, well, there's another anomaly just to the north of this. Why don't we go and look at that? And so and now it's getting a bit late in the spring. Now it's starting to be April, May. So we put the drill on what then was target A154. All these targets on the Aber ground had A in suffix, right? And these were targets we put numbers on. You couldn't tell the number of targets there were. There was A154. There was a lot of targets. Mm-hmm. But we decided to drill this because it had a signature, a weak signature, just like A21 did. And of course, the A21, the A154 is actually 2 pipes. It's A154 north and A154 south. And the south, there was the larger of the 2, and they separated by 100 meters, a few hundred meters of granite. So when they went in there, of course, they look at this anomaly, which is this sort of shape, and they put a hole in the middle, right? But in fact, what it is 2 things like this. So the hole went between the 2 pipes. And Ira and Robin are there at the time, and I think Buddy. Anyway, they decide now the ice is going out that would be it. We can't really drill another hole, but they persisted with the drillers until we like to move the drill just a few hundred meters to the south and drill that. And that, of course, was the 154 South discovery with a big diamond in it.
And so you just got a phone call, or how up to speed were you?
Well, we were, busy raising money for various projects for Aber, the principal one being up at High Lake. And so I get this phone call from the camp, from Ira, saying, in effect, don't do that financing. I want to speak to you first. Because you couldn't say anything on phones in those days. They weren't secure, And of course, they were an improvement over the radio, which is what we were using before. But these phones were still not secure. So I could tell by talking to her that there was something up. So, but I didn't expect to see her show up in Vancouver with a with a piece of core with a diamond sticking out of it, which we did at Bob Heinsohn's house, who was the VP of exploration for Aber, and he lived in Vancouver between the airport, and so we met at his house, and she showed us the stone. It was very exciting. Bob may have been on the ground at the time. I can't remember. Bob, of course, had a lot to do with it as well. I mean, people talk about the people who were there at the time, but there was actually a lot of other people behind the crew that were on the ground. It's always a team of people. Right? They just happened to be there at the time. But Bob takes a lot of credit for it. And as did the whole group, So it was a very exciting time. And of course, we still don't understand diamonds well enough to grasp the significance of this, right? Although we did think, well, if you can hit a diamond of this size in a small core, this has got to be a rich pipe. And of course, the diamond people said, well, confirmed that this is the case, and that you just don't find diamonds in core like that. In fact, we found two. There was what they call the Avid Diamond, which is about 2 carats, and I was about 80 meters, and then down about 150 meters, there was a 1/4 carat stone. So there were actually 2 in there. And it was interesting when they found it. They were in the logging core. I think maybe Buddy and Ira and Robin. And Robin picks up a piece of core, to look at the end of it, and he sees this indentation, a triangular indentation on the core, and he thought, that's a funny indentation. So he picks up the other half, and of course there's the diamond, and it had just broken along a plane there, and the diamond was sticking there. It was what they call a mackle, which is a triangular shape sort of thing, and flat. And of course it became known as the Aber Diamond. I often wonder where that is these days. I think it probably sits in what is now Dominion Diamond's office in Toronto.
So fast forward, how long was it before the market realized, and what was the ride that followed? How did it feel?
Well, it was very exciting and very stressful, of course, because you're, people are excited about it, and of course it was a big trader. The eye of the market was on it for ages, right? And of course, I can't remember what in the immediate aftermath what the stock did. I think it went up as far as $15 or $20 within a few months.
Where did the stock end up going to?
Well, it reached its peak when it was called Harry Winston, which was $51.
So what did it feel like to make a shitload of money so quickly?
Well, it took a long time to sink in,
Yeah.
People often say, well, it must have been euphoric or whatever, but it took me a long time for it to sink in. I wasn't ecstatic overnight. I was happy and it was fun, but I was never like, because in exploration, like I've been involved with numerous discoveries, and sometimes they don't work out that well, because you drill the initial hole, and then something goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
Or someone salted the core or something. Like about this time, just before this time, I was involved with 2 gold discoveries in the Northwest Territories that were brand new, and a base metal discovery on all of those discoveries, right, we drilled the best holes first. and
all downhill from there.
Yeah, and so I'm always a bit sort of reluctant to get too excited when I drill a good hole.
So you didn't think the money was in the bank until
No,
later.
it took a while.
Yeah.
Mind you had to have this underlying feeling that, hey, this is really something here, right? But nowadays, of course, I'd recognize it. Like the discovery made in Saskatchewan now last year, right?
Piku?
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful discovery. I mean, we can say we know enough about it now to say this thing. If there's enough tons, there would be commercial, right?
Well, you've always had a pretty long and stoic career in this space, and it's very impressive to see that not only your son but your daughter are in the business too. And what has that meant to you?
Well,
especially Ira's success. It's just staggering.
Well, it's amazing. It's. But I mean, I always told her when she was young that she could be anything she wanted.
What'd she tell you?
Well, she listened. And I'll forget it. It was walking through Calgary Airport, and we were talking. She was about 14. She was coming to work with me up north, and we were talking about the careers and stuff. And I said, "Look, you can do anything you want. Just don't forget that."
Is it important for kids to spend some time in the bush, you think?
Oh yeah, I think they need to know, because you don't want to be going into it unless you like it, right?
What do you think what could you attribute, I don't know if it's maybe tenacity or, I don't know, put words in your mouth, but what do you attribute some of your success to?
I was brought up to be fairly hardworking and fairly stoic, and sort of just going out and doing things that other people wouldn't want to do, And I read too many adventure books when I was a kid.
You think the mining sector is a good place to start a career?
No, of course it was. I remember reading these books when I was a kid. I'll never forget one. When I was a kid, there were popular English books were called Biggles. Biggles was a pilot, and he went all over the world, having adventures. And I always remember Biggles being in South America, flying prospectors around, and it sort of stuck in my mind.
Really?
Biggles in South America, I think it was called. Look them up. They were boys' books for kids about 10, 14 years old.
But you did most of your prospecting in Canada.
Yeah, that's right. But I had this image of the guy out in the bush, sort of flying around in planes, was one thing I sort of liked, the idea of.
Yeah.
Because I never thought it was possible till I went to university and came out here, actually, right?
You never thought you'd
I thought I was stuck being a coal miner for the rest of my life.
You never thought you'd find a diamond mine?
No.
No. What's been the best part of the business for you?
The people, I think. Yeah. Great people, Yeah.
Anyone in particular that stands out?
No, they're all great guys.
Yeah.
Some of them are rogues, but they're all interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, there's lots of outstanding guys. But I find, generally speaking, the culture of exploration is very good. It has nice people in it.
There's sort of sharks too, but
there are, but they're not real exploration people.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the geologists and the prospectors and the I'm not talking about the
promoters.
haywire promoters, who usually don't know a lot about anything.
What do you think makes a good promoter?
Well, the best promoters have some sort of technical background, right, and they believe what they're doing, right. There are a lot of people out there who don't understand what they're doing. I think in order to get the message across, you have to understand what you're doing and also to believe what you're doing and enthusing everyone else. In other words, I wouldn't put my money in this thing unless I wouldn't put your money in this unless I put my money in it. That's the way I would. That's the way I always evaluate what I'm telling someone. Would I do this?
So skin in the game and enthusiasm.
Absolutely. It's important. I mean, I'm sure a lot of other things too, but that's just a few that spring to mind.
Now, when you invest in junior mining stocks, do you participate in some of your friends' plays?
Yeah.
What is your expectation? 1 out of 10 is a home run, and 2 or 3 are okay, and the rest turn out to be duds? Or
no, I don't look at it in a statistical sense. You just have to have a feel for it and realize that the odds are that your enthusiasm will not be rewarded. I mean, because it happens often enough, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't, you always come back for more, right? I mean, that's what sustains exploration guys, is that despite all these failures, you'll still go back and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's character building.
Yeah. For all that rejection.
Yeah.
What was the most fun that you ever had in your life? Was it that diamond run in Aber, or was there being the 25-year-old in the Arctic buffer for the first time?
Yeah, I think, going out the first time up to the north was really exciting for me.
Yeah.
I used to work underground at Giant, and I did some hairy things in there, but it was very interesting. It always sticks in my memory. And then discovering exploration, that was exciting too.
Yeah.
And discovering I could actually do something I really enjoyed and make a living at it.
Yeah.
But I didn't dislike coal mining. I rather enjoyed that too. So
sounds like you have just a positive attitude.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I did all the jobs working in mines.
Gren, thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed your stories and look forward to watching the companies you're involved in and learning more from you in the future.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the invitation to come.
Anytime.
I enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Yeah.